Hi everyone. I have here a couple of word problems, which are word problems where you have to write the equation of a line, either in point-slope form or slope-intercept form. It really just depends on the exact information that they give you in the problem. So there's really two main types that they'll start you out with. The first is when they give you slope and a point. Now, you can read through the paragraphs that they give you, and if they're telling you slope, the key word that you'll see in the paragraph is per. Now, you might not always see that, but that would be a good thing to look for. So if it says per, most likely then that number is your slope. And then you would also scan through the paragraph to look for a point, which is just a pair of numbers that go together. And that would be the first type, which we're going to do an example of. And the second type of word problem that you'll see is they're not going to give you slope, but they will give you 2 points. So what you do, actually those problems are kind of noticeable because you'll see more numbers in them. I'll just jot that down. You'll see more numbers because they're giving you 2 pairs of numbers to create those 2 points. I'll just say 2 pairs of numbers. So those are the 2 types. Now, the first problem I wrote down here, it is the first type. There will be a slope in the paragraph and a point. So let's read through it. It says a car was bought in 1990 for $32,000. Now those are 2 numbers right off the bat. They go together. So those 2 numbers are telling you your point. All right. Now if you keep reading, during the next several years, the car depreciated by $3,000 per year. So there's that keyword per. So that definitely is the slope. Okay, now here's a few other little tips that can help you. It says write an equation that gives the value of the car in terms of the year. Now that little phrase right there, everybody usually has trouble picking out what X should be and what Y should be. But when they say that phrase, the value of the car, the first thing they mention is your Y. And then it says in terms of the year, that second thing that they mention is typically your X. Of course, there's some exceptions to that rule, but usually that phrase will have the Y listed first and then the X. Another thing that you can also remember if you're having trouble picking out X and Y, to help with picking out X and Y, X is almost always going to be the time. Like if they mention time in the problem, whether it's minutes, hours, days, years, X will be the time. So X almost always is time, if that's mentioned in your problem. So now, the point I wrote down or I highlighted first was 1990 for $32,000. I'm going to write that down as an actual point. Now, you might have noticed at the very end it said let 0 equal 1990. So that means in my point I can write 0 because that's the time, and then 32,000 because that's the value of the car. And then the other number we said was slope. Slope, which is M, is 3,000. Now the only thing is it's depreciating. That means the car is losing money each year, so the slope would be negative 3,000. All right, now that we have a point and slope, we can plug into point-slope form. So point-slope form, I'll remind you, is this. All right, so we plug our point in. The y1 is, I'll just label it up here. The y1 is the 32,000. And when we get over here, slope is negative 3,000 x, and then the x1 was 0. And then I think with word problems, the teacher would like you to have y alone. So let's distribute the 3,000 first, like that. So negative 3,000 x, and then it's just going to be plus 0, so I won't write that. And then I'll add 32,000 over to this other side. And you can't actually add it with the negative 3,000 because that has an x with it. So your answer is just negative 3,000x, and then just tag on the plus 32,000 at the end. And that would be your linear model. And then if they asked you other questions like how much is the car worth in 1992, then you just plug in 2 for the x, because 1990 was 0, so then 1992 would be 2. And you plug that in and see what you get for the value of the car. So let's go on to number 2. I told you ahead of time this would be the kind where they give you 2 points. So if we start reading, a parachutist jumps from a plane and opens the parachute. 8 seconds later, the parachutist is 2,000 feet above the ground. So that is definitely a pair of numbers that goes together. And then it says after 13 seconds, he is 1,900 feet above the ground. So those two numbers go together. I just highlighted them in a different color. Now write a linear equation that gives his height. His height is mentioned first in terms of time, mentioned second. So his height is y, his time is x. Alrighty, so the first point, if I write it as an order pair, since time is x, the 8 seconds would be the first number, and since his height is the y, the 2,000 would go right there. And then the second point, again, time is x, and that had said 13 seconds, and y is the height, so that's 1,900, because he's getting closer to the ground. So now I have 2 points, and I still think the best form to plug into initially is point-slope form. But the first thing you have to do with 2 points is find the slope, because they did not give that to you. So let's just do, how about 2,000 minus 1,900 all over 8 minus 13. That's just the slope formula. So that's 100 over negative 5, and that equals negative 20. So this m is negative 20. I'll just circle that because we're going to need to use it. Now, I'm going to plug into point slope form again. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And you can pick either point to plug in for x1, y1. Why don't we just plug in the first point? Doesn't really matter at all. So that's going to be your x1 and your y1. And we have the m written down to the side. So I'll have y minus 2,000 equals, and then slope is negative 20 times x minus the x1, which is 8. And let's just take a second to get y alone. So I'll distribute the negative 20 plus 160 and rewrite the stuff on the other side. And then just add 2,000. 2,000 is going to add together with the 160. So we'll just get y equals negative 20x plus 2,160. And that is your linear equation that they asked for. And again, they could ask you additional questions. Like they could say, how high is the parachutist after 10 seconds? Then you would just plug in 10 for the x, and get the answer. You could use your calculator maybe to help you out, and that would be the height that he is above the ground after 10 seconds. But that's it on how to write these equations.